Maynard Maynard James Keenan from Tool said this amazing thing. He said that the first two albums of any band is the best work they do because they did not spend like 2 years, 3 years to make those two albums. They spent their whole life to make that album. So you imagine like a person born and then they live their whole life and then they become what, like teenagers, whatever, and then the time they've spent with that teenage angst, with whatever they think or recall about their life, their autobiography in a way, right? Because the first two albums are the actual performative autobiography of artists, and that's why the first two albums are always, mostly, generally speaking, the best those people produce. And so then I was thinking about myths because I'm starting to look at the whole lifetime of people or individuals, right? You look at them as myths because there is an idea by Joseph Campbell where he says that mythology is a production of the wisdom body. Now, what he means by wisdom body, I have no idea, but I do understand that body has more wisdom than your deepest philosophies. Body has survived for far longer than the conscious mind has, for example, or anything that we call consciousness. And so I was trying to think about music and musical albums as performative autobiographies of people. So it's just like their deepest instincts expressed in musical form. And so I went right back to the guy who I think is the best artist of all time in like every way possible, because the dude, the amount of skill he has and the amount of fame he has and the amount of cash he has, like everything is maxed out. And so he seems to be a beautiful example. It's Eminem. It seems to be a beautiful example of how creative intelligence can be pushed to every realm of somebody's life. It can be pushed to business, it can be pushed to marketing, it can be pushed to everything. And then the person is a crazy successful artist. So I was like, okay, let me look at his discography, because I have heard his discography like 7,000 times, or even more than that. And so I was thinking about, like, okay, there are three characters that you come across whenever you get into Eminem's discography. One is Marshall. Marshall is his real name. Marshall is going to be the ego, for example, right? Marshall is going to be the person or the entity that is trying to hold everything together, the center of consciousness, Marshall, right? Everything that feels responsible, everything that has a sense of I, the narrator, right? That's the ego. That's Marshall. Then the second character we meet is Slim Shady. Now, what is Slim Shady? Slim Shady is everything the persona denies. So now persona is something you put in front of the world so that you are accepted, right? So you are a normal person. Shadow is everything that the persona denies, that this is not me, right? Tabooish things, our deepest instincts that will be considered immoral or horrible. The things we use to judge people, for example, and try to put them on a value hierarchy. So at the bottom of the bottom, that is everything we push into the shadow. So that's Slim Shady. What about the third character, right? The third character will be the character that is marketed. So the character's name, right? It's going to be Eminem, for example. So Eminem is the persona through which we hear the myth of Marshall and Slim Shady. That's all we do. Because Eminem is just like this metaphorical stage or metaphysical stage where these two characters play their play, act out their drama. And as I was going through that and thinking about it, listening to music, I realized that there's a thing called individuation drama. Now, individuation drama means that through plays you show the process of individuation. Now, individuation means integrating your shadow with your ego. So, where like ego uses shadow's powers, and you have a better persona, for example, that you can put in front of the world. And so I started looking at album, and let's look at it chronologically, right? Like how his discography seems like a myth, and myth is something that expresses way more than words do, because myths and mythology is like a creation of the body wisdom body, sorry. And wisdom body, I will just say, like billions of years of evolution and the human ability to narrate. and see everything in narrations and meanings. These two things, when they come together, we form mythologies. And so, to look at this myth, right, the first album, Infinite comes out, and when you listen to Infinite, you will see uh, a desperation of a youngster who's trying to make it, obviously. And how is he trying to do that? He's very technical. Lyrics are fucking phenomenal. Everything is great, but it lacks something. It does. If you listen to the song Infinite 2, right, the lyrics are crazy. Like there is a line where it says, "My pen and paper cause a chain reaction to get your brain relaxing. The shady act, the maniac in action. A brainiac, in fact, son. You mainly lack attraction. You look insanely whack with just a fraction of my tracks." Everything rhymes. Everything rhymes. It is not that he's rhyming words. He's bending words and then bending syllables and then he's rhyming syllables. So everything rhymes. Every kind of sound, every kind of phoneme rhymes. So technically amazing. Album flop, thousand reasons for that. What we see there is Marshall, which will be the ego, trying to make it into the world, and that is his introduction. And the way he tries to introduce himself is through technical ability, which is phenomenal. But what does it lack? I mean, other than expensive production, what does it lack? It lacks soul. It lacks this crazy. It only expresses desperation throughout the album, and a person trying to put on a character that has not developed yet. And so we see, like, yeah, I mean, I love to listen to Infinite, but then what about other albums where the soul was found? So to imagine Marshall, ego, the center of consciousness, as the protagonist of this myth, we will see that in Infinite, it's a beautiful introduction. Somebody trying to gain respect, no matter what, trying to keep his private life a little private, and then trying to make it. But what about the shadow? What about, like, imagine the person goes out, uh, a failure, we can say, in 1996, hasn't done much great skill, but hasn't done much in the game, in the scene yet, has no respect. So, like, the guy comes up with the next album, and the next album was Slim Shady EP actually, but then we are gonna go professionally. So it was Slim Shady LP in 1999, 3 years after, and that is the introduction of Marshall, the ego, to the world. But the album is called Slim Shady LP, so that would be, it's more of that for the first time musically. Slim Shady, the shadow, is expressing itself. And now, what is Slim Shady like, right? Now, imagine shadow is everything that we try to hide from the world. So then, Slim Shady is everything you try to hide from the world, right? And I love that album. It's just crazy. It's batshit crazy. There was nothing like Slim Shady LP before Slim Shady LP. There was nothing like that. The topics he covered, how ruthless he was, how authentic he was, how he was talking about things that were very controversial but still kept doing it. Now, what happened there? As soon as the guy gave his shadow the voice, he experienced strength. And so when he experienced strength, he, and now really pay attention to, like, how when you start to feel strength in your life, it's not just like an isolated part of you that receives that strength. Everything in your psyche receives that strength. It's also going to be like the fucked up sides of you, the demons inside, right? For example, Shadow, right? Shadow got a little too powerful and also made a lot of money. Gave him a lot of respect, something that Ego wanted. Something Ego wanted in Infinite. He got it through Slim Shady, through expressing his shadow completely out to the world, almost going a little too crazy. And so he enters the scene, produced by Dre, great shit, amazing album, and mythologically a beautiful introduction to Shadow. So now it wasn't, you can't really say that it was Marshall rapping. I mean, there are some songs that seem like Marshall is rapping, like Rock Bottom. You listen to Rock Bottom, it's a really sad song, but an amazing song. It's by Marshall. But then the main theme is onto Slim Shady. And also, and then you notice, like, in the song Rock Bottom, the way he's expressing, that song has great soul. And that, I think that song was actually taken from Slim Shady EP that came before that. So what do we see here? We see that when you let the shadow express itself, you experience strength. and your demons get the strength, but then also your ego also gets the strength. So then now the ego tries to use shadow as much as it can. You imagine, like, the forbidden fruit is tasty. Why? Because it makes you feel strong, it makes you feel good. So Slim Shady LP, over, beautiful album. And then comes the next album. Now comes Marshall Mathers LP, right? And for the first time, well, it was the second album, so the name Marshall is in the title of the album. And this really shows that the line between the shadow and the ego is blurred. Because what does your shadow try to do? Your shadow always tries to capture your ego, because it's not expressed much, right? So it always wants to express itself through your psyche. So what happened was, in Marshall Mathers LP, you find that the lines between Marshall and Shady are blurred. And so you see this crazy person who's talking about insane things. Like the first song is Kill You, where he's talking about horrible things like killing his mother, and talking about women, saying insane things and kill you. There is a song Criminal, which is crazily offensive, which just shows like this person's strength is just out and the demons got it. And the demons got it so much that the line between, you can say, the line between the ego and the line between ego and shadow is blurred. So then you see like one of the greatest albums of hip hop, to be honest. One of the, because something insane happened. The ego started to identify with the shadow, and that is a crazy thing. And I think that is what's called shadow possession. So now, when Marshall is possessed by the shadow, he has absolute strength. He has absolute, you can say, balls. Uh, he's very brave, and now he can put his things out the way he actually wanted to. So the album also has a lot of soul. Why? Because yeah, strength increased hundredfold. But the problem is that the ego got captured by the shadow. That's what the problem is, and that's how we usually find. This is a pattern we find in mythologies, right? There is a character in the beginning. He has no identity. This happens in every single movie as well, and every single narration. A character has no identity in the beginning. His life is normal, mundane, and then there comes a time when he has to do some shit. So that's a call to adventure. Well, he got a call to adventure. We can also look at it from a metaphysical realm. So you would say that Marshall was there, ego was there, and then you also look at his shadow that came around. So the story was about like his shadow and ego fighting it out. Because at first the shadow is trying to help the ego, or it seems like, but then it captures the ego, and for good reasons. He was making money, the music was great, so he did that. And so now ego is captured by the shadow. And then comes the next album, The Eminem Show. Now this is the first time the word Eminem, the persona through which we are seeing the thing, is put on the album cover, and it's a coincidence that it's called The Eminem Show. Like even at the cover it looks like you are out there to watch a play, because there are curtains. He's sitting in between as if like he is going to perform a play. And so he does. And what he does is like, I remember I was watching his interview from 2002, and that is when Eminem Show came out. And this reporter asked him a question. The reporter asked him, "How do you differentiate between Shady and Marshall?" And Eminem said that I used to do that before because it was fun, but now I just don't do it. I think they are the same thing. That actually hints at what happened in MMLP. Like the shadow captured the ego, right? I mean, that's my interpretation. And so you see the Eminem Show, and Eminem Show is actually a bigger and better album than MMLP, Marshall Mathers LP. This is going to be controversial in the Eminem figures, Eminem fans. But then Eminem Show is a better album than Marshall Mathers LP, because Eminem Show is like the ego and shadow are together, and the ego and shadow now are fighting the collective unconscious, because the collective unconscious are the societal structures around, right? So for like 2 albums, you have said fucked up shit using your shadow, and you have been rewarded for it. But then societal structures are gonna come and try to stop you from doing that, because you can't do that, right? You can't say crazy shit. So what happens, right? The shadow, the ego, they are so strong and so authentic and so brutal that they would go against the societal systems. I mean, I remember like there was Eminem pulled out a pistol somewhere and for concealed weapon or whatever, and he was filed. Uh, he went in front of a judge. There were a lot of lawsuits. But then there's a song Soldier where he's just openly talking about like, yeah, I will still shoot people. And so it shows like complete, integration of not integration but possession of ego by the shadow, and those two are working together now against the collective unconscious, against anything that's going to come towards me. That's like the prime uh, strength yet that the ego can experience. Because just imagine, what if you can say fucked up shit to whoever you want to? That's that's the highest level of strength you can have, highest level of strength that you can have, and that's something he had and he showcased in his music. And so comes the next album, right? So by the time of Eminem Show, he's got enough money to burn. He's got like he's made it. He's got respect. He's got everything. He's got numbers. He's got everything. So then what happens, right? Then come the consequences of being captured by your shadow. He got into addiction, for example. He just you would find that he's still trying to use his shadow a little too much. But then I think this is what the problem is. When you try to portray characters out to the world and you are an entertainer, and then people are incentivizing your characters, then the lines between your stage persona and your real life blur. And so what happens? You start living that fantasy, but you are not that fantasy. And that is what shadow capture is. Like shadow has captured you so much that the shadow is not just in your art, but shadow is now in your real world. You know what I'm saying? So shadow, so like Shady wasn't in Shady and Shadow, see? So Shady wasn't in just music. Shady was now in his real life, and that's when Encore came out. Now Encore is a great album too. The song like Mockingbird is a great song. Venom Gone is not from Encore, but it's like the same time frame, 2005. But Encore comes out and Encore shows the effects of being captured by your shadow. It just shows drug addiction. It shows like this person is so addicted to feel the strength of shadow that he just doesn't feel it anymore when he goes on stage or when he is making music. So you see that suffering, right? And so Encore comes, and then we have to wait like a really long time. I think 5 years. Encore was 2004, and then in 2009 we get Relapse. Now a lot of things happened between Encore and Relapse, like his drug overdose. He was having like 72 pills a day, sleeping pills. His best friend died, right? His childhood friend who supported him all through his struggles, he died. And so he got into addiction. His brain was so fucked up that he could not write at all, so he had to learn how to write again. He had to learn how to rap again, right? So Relapse comes out, and Relapse seems to be when the ego is trying to like stay with whatever the ego learned from the shadow, and then try to use that to still move forward in life. So that's what Relapse is. So Relapse is like this album full of serial killer vibes, and it's talking about killing people. There's a beautiful song by the name of Beautiful as well, but it seems more recoverish like than it seems relapsey. And so Relapse comes, and we see that the ego for the first time is trying to understand the shadow's powers that he got and trying to make the best out of it, for example. And so we see that this is the first time we see the ego fight the shadow, but he's not acknowledging that he's fighting the shadow. It seems more like he is still in the grips but trying to make it out. And so Relapse got over, beautiful album again, and then we are met with Recovery right the next year. And this is where things are crazy, because in an interview he said that he got horrible reviews for Relapse because of he had some accents. I love those accents, but then not a critically acclaimed album. But then you look at Recovery, and he said that in Recovery he wanted to own sobriety. He wanted to own being sober. He wanted to own that he's free of drugs. He wanted to own that he's out of it. So for the first time in Recovery, it really seems like it's Marshall again, and it's Marshall not like a persona, but it's like actual Marshall. Because there are some fucked up songs in this album too. Like the first song, "Cold Wind Blows," it's insane, but it's not shady. It's like shady like, but it's Marshall through Eminem. That's what we see. Beautiful songs, right? Again, Everybody's heard Love the Way You Lie. I don't like that song, but Not Afraid, beautiful album, beautiful song. Spacebound, beautiful songs. That's what Recovery did. And in Recovery, we see Ego take hands, not against Shadow, but for the first time using Shadow's powers for good, or using Shadow's power to better himself, or using Shadow's power to express certain things. So the myth is at the point now where there is not animosity between Shadow and Ego, but there is not even acceptance, but like more like acceptance of the strengths that the Shadow brought to the Ego. It seems like what he did in the Eminem Show. I mean, what he said in the Eminem Show interview, that he doesn't differentiate between the two; they are the same. Now it seems like they pretty much are. They seem more integrated than they did back in Eminem Show. But then here's the trick. Here's the trick. Jung said that whenever you push your shadow a little prematurely into repression, or you deny it, or you live in a way that seems like you have repressed your shadow prematurely, it comes back with its own stronger autonomy. So it comes back with more strength than it did before. And so we see this experimentational myth again in Marshall Mathers LP2, which is the next album. Another crazy good album. But here's the insane part. Like in Recovery, how Ego became very powerful and started using shadow strengths. In the first song, Bad Guy, it's like part two of Stan, where the younger brother of Stan comes back to kill Eminem. But then in the last verse, everything changes where Eminem starts talking about how Matthew and Stan both are symbolic of certain fucked up things that are inside of him. So it shows this beautiful self awareness that has now finally arisen because of recovering, because of the album Recovery. So Marshall Mathers LP2 is actually for the first time Marshall Mathers talking to you brutally, and the album's name is also Marshall Mathers LP2. So you also imagine like this that journey that you experienced there back in Marshall Mathers LP, the first album. You see that it seems like Marshall feels strength, Ego felt strength back in Marshall Mathers LP2. I'm sorry, Ego felt strength back in Marshall Mathers LP, but it was actually shadow possessed Ego. So Ego started identifying with the shadow. But now in Marshall Mathers LP2, you don't see that, because that's not the case at all. You know how that's not the case at all? Because in Marshall Mathers LP2, there's a song Evil Twin, and it's about how he claims for the first time that we are the same bitch. And that seems like, shadow integration doesn't mean that you deny the shadow. It means that you accept the shadow. So you kind of go like, yeah, shadow is me as well. But you can't do that before you take shadow's strengths. It's kind of like, following Tyler Durden from Fight Club is not the goal. The goal is to integrate Tyler Durden's strengths into you, into the ego. And so Marshall Mathers LP2 comes, and because of Marshall Mathers LP2, you can understand like that beautiful journey between Marshall Mathers LP and Marshall Mathers LP2. It's amazing. And so what happens, right? Such a beautiful album comes out, critically acclaimed, everything, fame, whatever. Even the song Rap God is in there. Now comes Revival, and Revival to me, it's like the most ballsy album he has put out. No joke. Like, you can talk about how he talked about Columbine shooting back in 2001. I think in 2000 in Marshall Mathers LP. Yeah, that doesn't take balls to do. What he did in Revival takes balls to do, because he was strong enough to be vulnerable. In Revival, he was strong enough to be vulnerable. Now, how? The first lead single that comes out is Walk on Water. I absolutely love that song. But that song, people shitted on. Why? Because there was nothing but just piano playing, and he's rapping on piano, and his beautiful poetry. He took that risk. There was no snare, there were no drums, there was no bass. It was just Beyonce and Eminem's lyrics. It was like spoken poetry, beautiful music, and also being very vulnerable for the first time. That's what you see. And it actually shows that, finally when you take up the when you integrate your shadow to your ego again, things are good. Things get crazy. You become strong enough to be comfortable being vulnerable, and that's what he did anyway. So now we see shadows, like the Marshall Mathers way of coming out, because since Relapse, it's just Marshall. There is no Shady there. It's just Relapse, Recovery, MMLP2. You look at Revival, it's all Marshall. It's the ego taking charge. And so Revival was shitted on, and then the next album Kamikaze comes out, and Kamikaze is this insane, aggressive album where you see the ego use Shadow's powers a little more. A little more. He's a little rude. He's a little crazy, but still ego. But still ego. There is a great song, Not Alike, one of the greatest songs of all time. There is a song, Ringer, great, a beautiful song. There is a song, Greatest, it's amazing. There is a song, Lucky You, amazing. There is a song, what else is it? Stepping Stones, again, a very vulnerable song, but he had the balls to put it out. Why? Because ego finally integrated with the shadow. I mean, I should not say ego integrated with shadow, shadow integrated with ego. And then you see this beautiful strength that that he showed in Kamikaze. So it was just insanely crazy. And it also showed that the behavioral patterns stay the same. Like the way he reacts to criticism is still the same. But this time it's a powerful marshal doing it rather than shady. For instance, right? It's not shadow possession, it's more like ego taking hold back of the power. Not even power. Ego taking, like, not identifying with shadow, but identifying that some strengths from the bigger self. The bigger self would be your whole of unconscious and conscious together, and ego is only in the conscious. So ego acknowledging that there is something beyond him. So that's like the biggest humbling experience a human can have. That's what Marshall had. Integrated the shadow, and then you see what's up. And so the next album, right? Music to be murdered by, and this is just insane. This is just insane because it shows, and I think this is like, I think Music to be murdered by, especially the second part that came out, because it has both Music to be murdered by part 1 and part 2. It's the greatest album, maybe the best album. It's technically amazing. It has a beautiful blend of ego and shadow completely. It just seems like shadow is so integrated with the ego that the ego doesn't even have to think. It's like finally the integration has happened. And one thing we really see throughout this myth, right, from Infinite. Okay, so imagine like in Infinite, he was a young guy, pure ego, trying to find identity, did not have shadow. Slim Shady LP, shadow arised, right, gave some powers. Marshall Mathers LP, shadow possessed the ego. Slim Shady possessed Marshall. Eminem Show, ego, you know, I started identifying with the shadow. Okay, Encore showed how shadow, when shadow possesses your ego, what problems you go through. Relapse, that's a consequence of shadow possession, but it's still Marshall. And since Relapse, every single album, till I think even the last album, Death of Slim Shady, it's just kind of like, and again, the last album is Death of Slim Shady. It's like, it's insanity. It seems like a beautiful myth. It seems like, and this is what human body does, right? If you let human body express itself, it always falls in patterns, and that's what you see in Eminem's discography. And so Music to be Murdered by comes out, and it's just kind of flex. It's crazy. It's a great album. Every single line of this song has a double meaning. There is a song Book of Rhymes, and I go insane whenever I listen to it because every single song has a triple entendre, maybe double entendre, with like thousand meanings. You listen to Alfred's theme, insane. In Alfred's theme, he has sampled this Western classical music from 1850s, and he's rapping on like Western classical music. How do you do that? No idea. But if you want to know how to do that, listen to that song, Alfred's theme, beautiful. And so then finally, and right before shooting this video, I was listening to Guilty Conscious Part 2 from Death of Slim Shady, which is the last album that has been released yet. Like, I'm still excited to see what myth Eminem's gonna continue with in his future albums. But in Guilty Conscious Part 2, it's like a summarization of all of this struggle. It's like a beautiful summarization of everything. Because it shows that for the first time you see in that song communication between Marshall, that will be ego, and Shady, which will be the shadow, shady shadow. For the first time you see them communicating, and then you actually get a big summary of the whole myth, the whole discography, and you understand that Marshall needed the shadow to feel strong and be able to say things that he wanted to say but couldn't. So he got that strength from Shady, he got that strength from his shadow, but then the shadow got too strong because he started abusing drugs, for example, right? So shadow got too strong and just captured him. and then he suffered the repercussions, right? His private life was ruined, divorced, said a lot of things about his mother. Private life was completely public, for example, right? But then what happened? The ego won. This is what shows like his will is so strong. That's why he's such a great role model to be followed. His will is so strong that he got into his shadow multiple thousand times. Fame got to him. Like closest connection dies. Drug addiction. He also tried to kill himself right after Infinite flopped. Don't know what would have happened if his attempt was successful. We would not have this beautiful myth. And so, what I think is that Eminem is one of the greatest artists of all time. Why? Because his whole discography is a myth. His whole discography says way more than you would find some fucking, like, it's even better than philosophical text. And why it's better than a philosophical text? Because it's not written or thought, it's lived in a studio and put together through music. And that's what something he has expressed. He has took like what, 27 years to express it. That's how long of a career he has. Not even 27 actually, I think 28 almost. He took 28 years to express this whole discography that has this beautiful myth ingrained in him. His whole career is a battle between ego and shadow. That's all it is. And who has won? No idea. But you know who is rapping since Relapse? Marshall, not Shady. And Marshall is actually better than Shady if you really pay attention to it. Music to be Murdered By, that's Marshall. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy great album. So this was my piece. This is what I wanted to express. Eminem, greatest artist of all time.